What's going on, y'all? Today is Tuesday, May 7th, and we are officially today 116 days away from the beginning of college football season in 2024. And I'll tell you what, I've made a couple videos and a couple posts here recently, and I know we still got a long ways to go. But I'm starting to get very, very excited. Starting to, the more we talk about it, the more things I see about it, the more excited we get. So I just was excited this morning and was trying to decide. Actually, I was trying to decide which hat I was going to wear this morning. And I always wear one of these three hats. So I just kind of wanted to change it up this morning. I wasn't sure what I wanted to wear. So I laid some of my hats out here to try to decide between. And it occurred to me that when I seen this hat, that I had completely forgotten to order or buy at the time when Georgia beat Oklahoma in the 2018 Rose Bowl game, when Georgia was the 2018 Rose Bowl champions. I completely forgot to order that hat back then. And also, I'm also missing my 2021 Peach Bowl champions hat, where Georgia beat the Cincinnati Bearcats. So I'm also missing that hat. Not sure what I did with this one, but I was glad that I still had these. So I was trying to decide between the 2020 All-State Sugar Bowl champs, when Georgia beat the brake drums off of the Baylor Bears. Remember they had that coach, Matt Rule? Ain't he the coach of the Carolina Panthers now? Oh, no, he was or something. No, he's the coach of the Nebraska Cornhuskers now. He's that really great coach everybody was talking about. And then they played Georgia in the Sugar Bowl. Then I was trying to decide between the 2021 Capital One Orange Bowl champs. That was the year when mighty Michigan, decided that they were going to play Georgia. They were going to beat Georgia and go on to play in the national championship game. And Georgia come out and beat Michigan like an absolute drum. It was like 30-3 or 30-7 at halftime. Georgia didn't even have to score again in the second half. That's also the same year that Georgia went on to win the national championship against Alabama. In the last national championship game that Nick Saban ever coached in, he was beaten by Georgia by 15 points, by more than 2 touchdowns. And then I got over here. This is a good one. I like this one. I was trying to decide if I was going to wear this one, the 2022 SEC football champions, where Georgia destroyed the LSU Tigers. Remember, that was the day. That was the day that Jordan Davis. Excuse me. There's so many first round defensive linemen that Georgia produces. I get them mixed up sometimes. That was the day that Jalen Carter picked up the LSU quarterback, Jaden Daniels, and he had him in one hand. He had him in one hand, bear hugging him, and had up another hand, number one. That was the day that Georgia had LSU down 31-3 at halftime in the SEC championship game. And then I came over here to this one. Couldn't decide if I wanted to wear the 2022 Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl champions hat and wear. This was the game that Ohio State said Georgia was cheating because they were hitting too hard. I didn't go with that one. And then we come over here to this 2023 Capital One Orange Bowl champions hat. This was the I give up game. You remember when Florida State decided that they were going to what happened was Florida State really knew that they were about to get the brake drums absolutely beat off of them. They were about to be drug all up and down the field for 4 quarters, 3 hours of football. So they pretended like, that they didn't really care. That they basically quit on their team and quit on their program, quit on their university, and they laid down and took their beating at the hands of the University of Georgia like a good boy. But then, and like I said, I was upset because I couldn't find 2 or 3 of my other championship hats, like Rose Bowl championships, Peach Bowl championships. But then I did find, actually, I was looking for another one of my hats that I couldn't seem to find this morning. But, I do guess that this one will have to do. The 2021 National Championship hat, like I said, where Georgia beat Alabama in the last national championship game that Nick Saban ever played in, unfortunately. And also, I was going to wear my Martin Truex Jr. hat, and I was also deciding between my Braves hat. It was pretty close between those hats and this hat. Well, who am I kidding? It wasn't very close. I was wearing one of my Georgia hats. But it was unfortunate that I couldn't find the hat that I was actually wanting to wear today. But I did find this one, so I'm going to wear this one. So I just wanted to see what y'all thought about that. But anyway, I was just wanting to walk out here because I do better talking when I pace. had a couple things to say this morning. I know, like I said, football season is so close, and we all get so excited. I just wanted to share with you some fun facts about my favorite team, the Georgia Bulldogs. And there were so many, believe it or not, there were so many facts that I wanted to share. I actually had to write them down. Like I couldn't keep up with all this, and I thought this would be very interesting to share today. And just wanted to go over a couple things with you about things that my team has accomplished, the team that I root for has accomplished in, the last, I don't know, 6-7 years. And you got to be absolutely kidding me. I've been looking for this hat all morning long. I have been looking for this hat all morning long, and here I come out here. I decided to wear this hat because I couldn't find it, but then I come out here, and here it sits. I tell you what, it was sitting out here the whole time from right when I got out of my vehicle. I guess I took it off. Here it is. I found it. So I was looking. I was gonna wear my 2021 National Champions hat because I couldn't find my 2022 National Champions hat, and here it is. But so that one was getting a little hot anyways, like too much like my body heat. So I want to put on this fresh one, so it'll be nice and cool for my video. So I just wanted to go over a couple things here. So we'll start here in 2021, and we'll work our way back to 2020 and 2019 and 2018, and we'll see how Georgia's record has been, since then. So since 2021, the Georgia Bulldogs are 42-2. So let's see, since 2021, that's 3 years of football, right? The 2021 season, the 2022 season, the 2023 season, and now we're waiting on the 2024 season. That's why we're making this video today, because we're so excited. So basically in the last 3 years, Georgia has went 42-2. They've only lost 2 football games. So in the last 3 years, Georgia has as many national championships as they do losses. So let's back up a year to 2020. Since 2020, they are 50-4. Let's back up another year. Since 2019, they are 62-6. Let's back up 2 years. Since 2017, the Georgia Bulldogs are 86-11. They are, so home games, Georgia home games since 2017. So that includes the 17 season. So that's 2017, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. So yeah, that's 7 or 8 seasons there. Home games since 2017, Georgia is 41-1. In 8 years of football, they've lost 1 home game. Road games since 2017, they are 30-4. Georgia just completed 3 consecutive undefeated regular seasons. The only team to ever do so in SEC football history. I know it's SEC history. It might be in the entire nation. That can't be right because all these other teams play in these podunk conferences. Somebody had to win undefeated 3 years in a row, like up there in the Big 10 or the Big 12 or the ACC, where they don't play actual football. Where they're scared to play SEC teams, because we hit too hard. But Georgia just completed 3 consecutive undefeated regular seasons, the only time it's been done in SEC history. Especially with the 12 game, with playing eight conference games. They also just completed a 29 game winning streak, which was the longest in SEC football history. They won 29 games in a row. Kirby Smart is 96-14. So Kirby Smart took over the program in 2016, and everybody's given the first year as like a whatever year. Like everybody knows that when a coach first takes over a program, that the first year might not be up to standard of what they want, because they're trying to get in there, get their program started, get their things set in place. Kirby had to do a lot of cleaning up and a lot of updating. Mark Richt had the program where we were winning 10, 11, sometimes 12 games a year, but that wasn't good enough, so we brought in Kirby. And since 2016, Kirby has went 96-14. So out of those 14 losses, keep in mind 5 of those losses were in Kirby's very first year in 2016. So those still count towards his overall record. You don't just take out the first year like some fan bases would do. But if you take out those 5 losses from the first year, that's 9 losses total. 9 total losses since Kirby Smart has been the head coach of University of Georgia. Kirby just broke the record for the most wins through 100 games in college football history. Number one, like the number one, the best coach, the coach to have had the most wins through his first 100 games in college football history. So that's pretty impressive. 96-14 in 8 seasons, and most wins through 100 by any coach ever. Also, for a comparison here, I know that Nick Saban is the greatest head coach in the history of time. Since God created the earth, Nick Saban is the greatest to ever do anything. He's the greatest. He's the greatest to walk, the greatest to breathe, the greatest to do anything ever in football. And anything good that is done outside of what Nick Saban does is because of Nick Saban. That's why whenever Kirby left to take over at Georgia, that Nick Saban steadily started declining. But anyway, so just as a comparison, so we want to compare Kirby Smart to the greatest head coach of all time. Nick Saban, in his entire career, had a winning percentage of just over 80%. So it was like 80.2%. And Kirby Smart so far has a total winning percentage of 85.5%. So the greatest head coach of all time, Nick Saban, has a winning percentage that is 5% lower than Kirby Smart's. So we'll see what happens from here. Like I said, he is the greatest of all time, and his winning percentage is 80%, and Kirby's is 85.5. So on to my next page here. Like I said, there's so many accomplishments and so many things, but I'll try to breeze through these. Georgia's last regular season loss, the last time they lost a football game in the regular season, was in 2020 to the Florida Gators. Just to put that into perspective of how long ago that was, this is back when COVID-19 had first started. This is back when COVID-19 was brand new and everybody was, learning what this was and freaking out about it. This is when the COVID-19 pandemic started, is the last time Georgia lost a regular season football game. The last time Georgia lost a regular season football game, Joe Biden was just elected the president of the United States, wrongfully or not, even though there was another guy, Donald Trump, who had more votes than he did. But Joe Biden was elected on November 2nd, 2020, I believe, and Georgia's last regular season loss was November 7th, 2020. So that's how long it's been since Georgia's lost a regular season game. Georgia has the longest home win streak in the country. They don't get beat at home. If you come in to play Georgia at home, you're not going to win. It's just not going to happen. Georgia's last loss at home was in October of 2019 to the South Carolina Gamecocks, believe it or not. Also that day, Jake Fromm threw 3 interceptions. And our kicker, who was one of the best kickers in the SEC that year, missed 3 field goals. 2 of those interceptions were off deflection, so it wasn't really Jake's fault, but it was just, I guess I could make excuses and if and when and here and there and all this and that. But they lost. The last time they lost was October of 2019. That was, let's see, so that's 2021, 22. That's 5 or 6 years ago. No active head coach. So among coaches that are currently still coaching in college football today, no active head coach has beaten Kirby Smart since 2018. And that coach was Tom Herman. And that was when he was the head coach at the University of Texas. And they beat Georgia in the Sugar Bowl. Tom Herman is currently the head coach of the Florida Atlantic Owls. So over the course of Kirby's 8 years as head coach, he has had 63 NFL draft picks in 8 years. Now, just as a comparison, because I know that Nick Saban was the greatest to ever do anything in college football. Every stat there is to break, well, except for winning percentage, because we just went over winning percentage. Kirby has a 5.5% higher winning percentage than Nick Saban ever will have as of right now. We'll see how things go. But like I said, and must be, if he's the greatest head coach ever of all time, he must be better in every single stat. So just as, well, I don't know here, because just as a comparison, Kirby in 8 years has 63 total draft picks. So let's look over to Nick Saban, because he's the greatest to ever do it. No, Nick Saban. Okay, so in 8 years, Nick Saban had 48 draft picks. So in 8 years, Kirby Smart had 15 more total NFL draft picks than the greatest head coach to ever do it. Kirby Smart, as of right now, as of since this past NFL draft, he now has more first-round NFL draft picks than he does total losses. Again, we said Kirby in his time at Georgia is 94-16. Or was I right about that? I think so. Anyway, yes. 94-14. 96-14, something like that. 96-14, 96-16. I think it's 96-14. Yeah. Anyway, Kirby Smart now has more first-round NFL draft picks than total losses at his time at Georgia. So let's flip over here and talk about this bowl game a second. In 2023, Georgia played the TCU Horned Frogs and won the national championship game for the second year in a row. Consecutive national champions. And they beat TCU 65-7. This 65-7 beatdown was the largest margin of victory in any bowl game in college football history. They beat TCU by 58 points and broke the record for the largest margin of victory in bowl game history. That's any bowl game, any championship game in college football history. The exact same year. That happened in January of 2023. Then, this year, December of 2023, same year, they broke their own record by beating Florida State in the Orange Bowl 63-3, making the new margin of victory record 60 points. And by the way, like I said earlier when we were looking at the 2023 Orange Bowl champions hat, more on that in a minute. Well, this is that minute. You know, everybody's saying, well, Florida State didn't care about that game. You know, they were wrongfully snubbed out of the playoff, and they were angry. You know, Georgia had just won 29 games in a row. They had just like I said, they lost to Alabama in the SEC championship game. But at the same time, the last national championship game Nick Saban ever played in, Kirby and Georgia beat him by 15 points. So we can go tit for tat, and we can go here and there and everywhere on all of that. But Georgia had just completed 3 straight undefeated regular season, 29 games in a row, and had won the past 2 national championships in a row. And then when they lose to Alabama without Brock Bowers, without Ladd McConkey, without Amarius Mims, without Jamon Dumas-Johnson, and with some terrible calls where where they called a horse collar tackle that wasn't a horse collar tackle that led to the Isaiah Bond drop. You remember when Isaiah Bond caught the ball and it rolled from his chest all the way to the bottom of his stomach? And that set up a Bama touchdown going into halftime there. But regardless, they lost the game. But like I said, they've won the national championship the past 2 years in a row. And they had won 29 straight games in a row. And they had been the only team in college football history, or SEC history, to go undefeated 3 straight regular seasons. But it was only unfair that Florida State was left out of the national championship, or left out of the playoffs. Even though Georgia had only lost by 3 points. They won 29 games in a row, and then the one game they lose was by 3 points without their best players. But it's okay for Georgia not to get put in. But Florida State, it hurt their feelings so much that they decided that they didn't care. A lot of people say that Florida State had a lot of opt-outs. That a lot of Florida State's best players opted out of that game, so it doesn't really count that Georgia beat them to death. Well, from what I see here online from things I'm looking at, there were 24 Florida State players that opted out of that football game, including a large number of starters. 24 Florida State players opted out of that football game. So how can Georgia run around talking about how they beat them 63-3 when it wasn't even a real or fair football game? Well, let's see. Georgia had 27 players out of that game. Some of them weren't due to opt-outs. A large number of them were due to transfer portal. There were a couple opt-outs by Georgia, not 24. Some people opted out. A lot of people entered the transfer portal because, Georgia's second and third string is better than most 95% of rosters' first string across the country. So guys who can't get on the field here go to other schools and are like the dude there. Let me not get off on that tangent because we'll go for a minute on that. But guys who weren't... So Florida State had 24 players not playing in the game, and Georgia had 27. But the reason that they lost by 10 10 touchdowns. 60 points. Florida State lost by 10 touchdowns. The reason is because they had some guys opt out. Not to mention that when Georgia played that game, they had their second and third and fourth, even fourth string in. We had even our fourth string in by the end of the second quarter of that game. Carson Beck only played the first quarter and a half. And then Brock Vandegrift and Gunnar Stockton played. Gunnar Stockton started the second half, I believe. And then we were down to our fourth. We were playing like Jackson Muschamp in the fourth quarter, still scoring touchdowns. I mean, we had fifth and sixth string running backs. We had fifth and sixth string running backs breaking off for 30 and 40-yard runs, scoring touchdowns. Among the players who opted out for Georgia was Brock Bowers, the greatest tight end in college football history. Amarius Mims, guy just went 16th overall to the Cincinnati Bengals, first round of the NFL draft. Julian Humphrey, who is our starting cornerback this year. Smile Mondon, who Kirby Smart said is the most athletic linebacker he's ever coached in his entire coaching career. Kirby Smart said Smile Mondon is the most athletic linebacker he's ever coached in his entire coaching career. He was out of the game. Ra Thomas, Mississippi State's leading wide receiver that we got out of the transfer portal. Branson Robinson, our enormous second-string running back, was out of the game. But anyway, that's enough on Florida State. You know, they didn't care enough. They quit on their university. They quit on their team, and it's Georgia's fault. It's the college football playoffs' fault and Georgia's fault why Georgia beat them by 60 points, set a record. I'm starting to see a pattern here. Georgia's steadily setting records for biggest beatdowns in bowl games and championship games. Currently, in 2024, Georgia is the overwhelming betting favorite. I don't bet money, but Georgia is the overwhelming favorite to win the SEC championship and to win the national championship in 2024. You know, I hear a lot of this about, and this is my last point here. I hear a lot of this about, you know, Georgia Georgia's all about defense, but they can't really score points, and they can't really, you know, they don't really develop quarterbacks, and they don't really have that explosive an offense. In the past 2 seasons, 2023 and 2022, there have only been 2 teams in the entire country to average more than 40 points a game on offense. That's USC and the Georgia Bulldogs. And on to the not being able to develop quarterbacks, Georgia just won 2 consecutive national championships with a former walk-on quarterback who they had drafted in the 3rd round of the NFL draft a couple years ago in Stetson Bennett. Carson Beck also has the highest betting odds to win not only the Heisman Trophy next year, which is the greatest player in college football. Carson Beck not only has the greatest odds to win the Heisman next year, he also has this is on FanDuel. He also has the number one odds to be the number 1 pick in next year's NFL draft. But Georgia, you know, they don't play offense. They just play defense, and they can't pass the ball. They don't have good quarterbacks. They just lock you down on defense. You know, they only score 40 points a game, only worthy to be compared with Lincoln Riley and USC. So that's just a couple facts I wanted to give you today. I might wear both hats. Today. But those were just a couple of the facts that I could think of right off the top of my head. I'm sure if I did a deep dive into it, I could make like twice those notes. I just wanted to inform y'all of that. Feel free to let us know in the comment section what your team has accomplished over the last 5, 6, 7 years. And keep in mind, I said last 5, 6, or 7 years to be relevant. Like, be relevant. I don't want to hear that your team won 6 national championships before 1940.